I've probably, over the last 30 years, used at least a dozen different intro psych textbooks. I don't remember ever having students spontaneously reach out to me about their experiences with a textbook. Textbooks are boring, right? I mean, there's something that it's a necessary evil that you have to tolerate in a course. Not this book. It's just not that way. I every single semester, I get emails from students who tell me how much they enjoyed the book, how much it's spoken to them, how interesting it is. And I've read so many textbooks that talk about, imagine you're being chased by a bear. And then the question is do you feel the feelings right away, or do you feel the physical experience and then you label the feelings? I don't know many students who've been chased by a bear. Andy doesn't do that. Andy talks about what happens when you spill water on your cell phone and that feeling of panic that you have of, oh, this lifeline that I have has potentially been damaged. And I've got to tell you that I think that example is what convinced me to use the textbook, because I remember reading that and going, yes, I can relate to that. And if I can relate to that, I think my students can relate to that, and they can. There are just so many wonderful features that impact students' lives. There are videos like our students make, the My Take videos, where the students talk about how concepts and principles that we learn in introductory psychology apply to their own lives. There are apps that they can download onto their phones and use and see how these principles apply in their life. The diversity coverage is excellent, it really is. And Andy does two things in this textbook. He has a separate chapter that addresses some really important diversity issues, but he also weaves it organically throughout the textbook. And that really is how I see textbooks of the future, which is that we don't have to have a standalone chapter because we've learned how to talk about these issues in the context of all of the things that we're learning in intro psych. But we do need that extra chapter right now. So I love having that as an option. But if I can't cover it, if I have a compressed class or I need to eliminate a chapter, I can actually not include that chapter and be quite confident that I'm getting the coverage that I need because it's woven throughout the textbook in such a great way. I had a really interesting story last semester where a visually impaired student, reached out to me and said that in one of the chapters there was an app that was included as an illustration of, I think, an assistive app for somebody who has these types of challenges. And she told me that the inclusion of that app brought her to tears, that the fact that something that she actually relies on in her everyday life was something that an author thought was important enough to include in an intro psych textbook. The reality is that somebody who teaches online relies a lot more heavily on a textbook than someone who presents the material personally in a classroom. And because of that, it's so important to have a good textbook. It's made it easier for me to teach. It has given me better tools with which to create a good educational experience for my students. So, intro psych is such an important class, and it is really a potentially fun class, and I love teaching it in the classroom. The problem is when you teach it online like I do, you are more reliant on materials and you need those tools because you're not the one conveying the information live in 3 dimensions. And it's hard to create that experience for students. And a good textbook like My Psychology does that.